All right, and we're back once again with another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here from Lakers Fast Break, Pop Culture Cosmos, Inside Sports Fantasy Football, and Game Source. Thank you so much for listening to all of our great programs. Well, still a lot to talk about in the NBA as we get closer, ever so slowly, to a possible start date for the NBA. Still a little bit of ways away, but looking forward to something happening real soon in the whole context of an NBA season. And here to talk to me today about that and other Laker topics is my good friend. I know him as Tom Wong, but you know him as the man behind Lakerholics.net. You got to go ahead and be a part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.net. It is LakerTom. And LakerTom, thanks for turning back on today's show. Appreciate it so much. Thanks again. I hope you're safe. You and your family are safe as we get back into some sort of semblance of our society. Maybe it's a little bit too soon. Maybe it's the right time. I'm not sure. That's a debate that's hotly going on. But the NBA, seeing that other leagues are now going ahead full blast into their seasons or planning it out or making schedules or guaranteeing that there's, guaranteeing start dates, it looks more and more like the NBA has got the kind of go ahead, of course, to go ahead and start the NBA season at some point down the line.
It sure looks that way, Gerald. It'd be wonderful to be able to have a chance for the Lakers to finish off this season and actually compete for that championship that I thought we had a good shot at. Nothing for certain, but I think that Adam Silver's recent conversation with the players really covered a lot of ground and set some of the conditions and situations that would happen. And it was very interesting, and I think overall encouraging. The only thing that I think all of us are a little worried about is whether or not there'll be some rebound of the coronavirus, and that could just derail all of the plans for all of the leagues if a bunch of people all of a sudden start getting sick again and the death counts start to rise. It's not a really promising sign when you look at the three top guys in the coronavirus task committee that Trump put together are now all sequestered and self-sheltered in place. The vice presidents and two people on the staff have tested positive, and there's questions about the tests and so forth. And you think that if it's hard to imagine any of the professional leagues, even with their power and so forth, being able to manage this situation if the White House itself can't seem to manage it. So, but at any rate, I think there are some positive things to talk about. Adam Silver covered a lot of ground in his conversations with the players, starting off with the idea that it possibly could be Eastern Conference finals or playoffs, so to speak, being held in Disney World, and the Western Conference holding theirs in Las Vegas, where you might be able to become one of those few fans that could sneak in there.
Well, I'm hoping for that. Again, there's still debate on where they're actually going to have the tournaments and have the actual completion of the season. Also, as well, they've talked about getting all 30 teams together in one place to go ahead and finish off the season as well. I know they could do it here in Las Vegas because not only did we talk about in past episodes about having 6 arenas able to play or that have played either major college basketball or NBA games in the past couple of years, you have also the Mandalay Bay has offered to build up to 24 courts. So you could actually have a lot going on, including practices and things of that nature going concurrently. So you could have pretty much, a really, truncated schedule and playoff schedule there. I know, I believe they can make up to 12 to 15 courts at Disney World. So they'll be also able to do it. Not quite the amount Mandalay Bay has, but you're right. If they go to a East-West type scenario, but they still would have to get together for the ultimate finals, which of course would be a smaller amount of teams.
Right.
too. So I think that's pretty good if they go ahead and split it up that way between Las Vegas and Orlando. Although, now the question is, oh my gosh, the guys would go ahead and gamble. They're stuck for a month in Vegas or not, or they're stuck for a month at Disney and they have to go ahead and Disney and, all these different other scenarios. I mean, they're there to play basketball. The other thing is, will the non-playoff teams, how are they going to be able to handle it? How are they going to be able to handle it? I mean, also as well, the fact is Adam Silver going to go ahead and institute his playoffs format, or is it just going to continue on as the last 5 or 6 games of the season? What does that say to a team like Golden State or Atlanta, who's really out of the playoffs? Why should they even care? Things of that nature. So it really is going to be a situation where they're going to have to work it out. And I know they've talked about extending the collective bargaining agreement in this situation. In regards to it, they just announced that as we're taping this, that they're extending it. And the deadline to scrap the current collective bargaining agreement has been extended so they could talk even further about how they're going to figure this out. So the logistics are still being talked about. I know also as well for optics, they were talking about, well, we don't want to go ahead and do it unless we know we can get enough testing because we want to make sure frontline workers get testing. And yes, that was optics, and that's great. But once they saw the NFL going full blast into its schedule, announcing and said, we're going to go in September regardless,
right,
things of that nature. And also NASCAR, they're going full board into it next week. Of course, they're going to be in racetracks without fans. PGA is starting up as well. And, all these other leagues are starting up. Soccer is starting up around the world. So you're going to go ahead and see these leagues starting, and they're going to have they're either going to have or not have enough testing. They're just going to start up regardless. With the NBA, at least I appreciate Adam Silver being concerned over the amount of testing, whether or not it's up to 15,000 or up to as much as 100,000 tests that need to be taken care of over the course of the period of time that they're there. I appreciate the fact that they're considering the safety of the players and also the safety of their families as well. This is something that I don't think other leagues are taking, that kind of care in comparison. So kudos to Adam Silver. But you're right, as I said before, but I'm right. But as I said before, it's all about optics, and they didn't want to be the first to jump back into it. But now that everybody else is, hey, let's go ahead and start our season as well.
Well, there's a couple of things that he brought up that sort of tied into just what you were talking about. One being that even though he said that every one of the owners wants to come back and play to finish the season, so that would include the teams that were not in the playoffs, but he also said that they're pretty committed to not wanting to end up with an asterisk on the playoffs. So they're planning on having 7-game series, thinking that just because they're going to be done in a single venue at a single location, that they can save time, for the travel and so forth, so that they can afford to do that. And I think that's an important thing, just to make sure that there is as little tinge or asterisk attached to this championship when they get it done. What you'd hate to see, I mean, it's a good thing to think that if you still have to go through 4 rounds of playoffs, you have to go through winning 7 games in each one of those rounds, so that you have a full-fledged playoffs, even if they decide that they may not play out the rest of the season. I still think that that's an issue, that you've got 14 teams that are in the lottery that basically, they're going to go through a 3-week training course to come back for 5 or 6 games in order to hit the 70-game mark. You almost think that they probably, just like the players and owners, are probably going to negotiate a smoothing of the cap just so it doesn't destroy the next 2 seasons in free agency. You got to feel that most of the local television people are going to work out stuff that can deal with this 70-game minimum. It's kind of interesting because the rule in the league is that everything over 70 games on the local television goes entirely 100% to the league, with the one exception being the Lakers, who actually have a per game deal on their local television network contract. So I think it's still not certain that they're actually going to finish out the season, the regular season. There's a lot of talk that 5 or 6 games is basically just sort of like a preseason just to get ready for the playoffs. And that may be the only reason that they're really playing it. Silver actually said he didn't really expect that anybody was going to have enough games that they could make up I think the closest any team is to getting into the playoffs that's outside of it at this point in time is 3 games. And that would be a lot to make up in a 5 or 6 game schedule, depending on how you want to end up the season.
But he really wants to do that tournament. He's really been pushing forward to it. He's really been pushing towards it. He's been, if the league would have gone as planned and the season would have gone as planned, he would have been setting up another vote between owners for a tournament for those last playoff spots, sometime before the next season started. So this is something that I think it's going to be an inevitability because Adam Silver is pushing it. I'm not sure I'm in love with it, but I'm a little bit more old school, but I'm willing to go ahead, at least for those last spots on teams that will most likely not go far in the playoffs. It'd be kind of cool and keep the other teams interested in. Although for those teams at the 7 and 8 spot, let's say the Lakers are there in the 7th or 8th spot, and they've worked hard all season to go ahead and be in that 7th and 8th spot. If they were to be bounced out in this tournament, it would kind of stink. But I can see the reasoning that you get more teams involved, thus more fans, thus more eyes, thus more cash, thus more dollars involved and invested if you had a tournament for the 7 to 12 spots to get into those 2 spots for the actual tournament, for the actual playoff.
I don't see them doing anything like that this season, just simply because I think that they want to make sure that there's as little negativity toward this being an exception. They want to remove the asterisk from any championship that's won by anybody this particular season. So I think that the playoff setup, at least for this season, will be the normal playoff setup. I do think that the one thing the coronavirus pandemic has done is definitely opened the doors for all sorts of different things to happen, and you can see it in all of the major sports. I mean, baseball actually talking about having 3 divisions of regional teams where the Yankees and Mets would be playing each other, be in the same division. Same with the White Sox and the Cubs and the Angels and the Dodgers. And playing a 100-game season and so forth. So there's definitely going to be a lot of creative things that are being talked about and a lot of ideas that are flying around. And I think that going into next season, not only with the NBA thinking of starting the season on Christmas Day in order to avoid going head to head with the NFL, at least for the most part of the season, I think that we're all going to see a new normal, and when there's a new normal and a whole different attitude toward how they're going to make their revenue. I mean, it's possible. Silver even brought up the subject that it could be possible that there wouldn't be fans next year either, that we may have a whole season as well as just the end of this season. We may see another entire season where fans are at, let's say at best, limited, where everybody has a capacity of maybe a third of what they would expect to have in attendance, and the actual tickets being sold represent, from when you count the playoffs included in it, 40% of the revenue that the league makes. So you're getting a whole new situation, and we'll see a lot of different things about how teams are going to broadcast games. The networks are going to have challenges. I mean, what are they going to pipe in audience sounds or turn on the microphone so that we can hear the players trash talk each other?
That's what I want. I don't want it.
That could be really interesting.
No, piped in audience sound. What I do want is unfiltered, uncensored NBA sound.
That could be very interesting.
People would pay for that. I'm telling you right now, people would actually, the NBA could make a little bit of its money back by doing that. Unfiltered, have a channel like the NBA channel, rated 18 plus, and there you go.
Well, you know, I have to admit, even though I'm a basketball aficionado,
Or add it to the
there are playoff games. You know, I have league pass. I don't watch every game, and I don't watch every game in the playoffs.
Add
by the time they start this playoffs, I'm going to watch every goddamn game.
Add an uncensored channel. Add an uncensored channel to NBA League Pass. I would highly recommend it. It would make and you could raise it up the price, just to compensate a little bit. But you know what? That's just something I'm throwing out there right there.
It's what the fans who get the front court seats get to hear that we don't hear. They get a whole different perspective of the game than the guys up in the bleachers like we are. So it is a little bit of that sort of idea that everybody now can have a virtual reality front row seat. They can hear exactly what the players say to each other.
Well, Rachel Nichols did say in a recent podcast that she would like to see that, and she thinks that might relate to younger audiences because right now, because the league, just before obviously the season went down, the ratings were down.
Right.
So that's something that is not. The ratings are down. So that's something that is of great concern to the league even before the season went down. So that'd be kind of cool to go ahead and do that. And that might relate to younger audiences having that type of unfilteredness and more accessibility. But I'm disagreeing with you. I think Adam Silver, if he gets a chance, and also to go ahead and spice the interest for some of these teams that are going there. Otherwise, they would be going through the motions for the last 5 games of the NBA season. I think they need to go ahead and possibly do a round robin tournament for either the 7 and 8 seeds, and something like that. I think they need to do that to spice up that interest. I think Adam Silver is really behind it, and I think he needs to go ahead and choose that for this occasion. Would I like to see that on a regular basis? I don't think so. But then again, if the younger audiences get into it,
it works. It works for baseball. I mean, you have to admit it.
It's going to have to be something
though when you play a 162 game season, and you go into a playoff, a sudden death type playoff game to determine whether or not you go on. That's one of the reasons why in baseball that because of the not playing 7-game series all the way through and having the wild card type games, is that teams can just get hot at the right moment and end up winning a championship. And I suppose for the average fan, there's a lot to say for that. It means you're never really out of the woods, especially if they put out those 14 lottery teams and let them go after. You add 2 teams there, you'd have 18 teams. They took those 18 lottery teams, or let's say 16. You take the number 18 in each division or in each conference, and you put together the 14 lotteries plus that, you've got a 16-game. Single elimination contest to see who's going to be the eighth team in each conference. It basically means that nobody's completely out of it. If you got somebody injured at the start of the year, there's a lot of talk that Kevin Durant could possibly, depending on how long this lasts, Kevin Durant and the Nets might be right back in there.
Well, no, they are in there anyways. I mean, with
a realistic chance
of winning the whole thing. But they are a playoff team as of the season, and as of the season getting suspended. It would be a team like Golden State. Would you go ahead to say to Curry, to Thompson, and the like, hey, there's a chance to get in this year's playoffs? That would be something extremely interesting that I know a lot of people would like. But again, the goal, if you're looking at also a long-term aspect and a long-term prospect as far as reaching a larger audience, that might be something that, even though it's to my chagrin and more of a traditionalist in that sense that I liked, if a tournament caters to a more larger audience, then so be it. And then also, if it goes unfiltered, you want to get more reaction from the court, more players mic'd up, like she was suggesting, so be it. Or other things. You got to start trying new things, because even though the Lakers are one of the most popular teams in the NBA, them on top right now this season hasn't worked out for the most part. I mean, they did have that one game right after Kobe, the first game after Kobe's death. the Lakers Clippers, Lakers Bucks weekend games. Those were very well rated. But there's been, for the most part, a season of games where it's just not getting enough ratings as opposed to what it was with Miami and then Golden State. Those numbers were getting really high.
I think there are other factors, though, that really play into that. One being a lot of streaming being done now. That isn't, people that aren't actually watching the network games. And then also, too, the NBA schedule is kind of a complicated situation where the league has very poor ability to make shifts at the end to improve the qualities of the games. And some of the matchups that they were playing on the big networks, on NBC or ABC and on Turner, some of those matchups were really not good matchups at all.
Well, Zion getting hurt really hurt a big chunk of it, and they were on 30 games total. There was, I think, 30 games plus total on that.
You think they could have adjusted a lot more than they did, but they played a lot of those games. A lot of those games stayed on the schedule because they couldn't feel anybody other game in there.
Yeah, they don't have something set up like the NFL does, where they're able to go ahead and change it on the fly. And if
everybody plays on Sunday, it makes it a lot easier to adjust your schedule according to the situation. But it'll be interesting. I mean, I one thing I would say is that I tend to think that there's a lot more validity to the idea of having a tournament for the number 8 spots in the playoffs than there is this mid-season tournament thing that they're trying to pull off.
That's the worst. Don't do that at all. That is the worst.
Seems to be a total loss. I don't see how that could work at all. The risk of injury just for somebody playing in that tournament. They're lucky to get a quarter out of the players really playing hard in the NBA All-Star game.
Yeah, that to me is. I mean, they've been trying to tweak with the midseason and the All-Star game for years now, and that's something they're going to have to continue to do. But no midseason tournaments, that's awful. And
what's really going to help this year, next year, would be starting the season on Christmas Day, and not having those October, November, and December games really suffer because of the NFL dominating things. And people just not getting into basketball. It's an 82-game season. It isn't 162 games like Major League Baseball, but it's a long season. And a lot of fans generally start to tune in December. So if you start in December and you got that nice long run there, you got a lot of run after the Super Bowl is over, where you're really the prime basketball time. So I think that they would do better. The other thing that, though, I think is that there is a lot of streaming of games now. And I know my son watches all of these games illegally, he downloads and streams every game that he wants to see, even though he's a Warriors fan. But he does that with movies, and he does it with anything, and there's a whole group of younger people today that they didn't grow up watching the networks. They didn't grow up just watching basketball on ABC and Turner and so forth. So I think that there's, it's going to change a lot going forward, because all of a sudden television revenue, I mean, if you look at the different industries that are going to benefit, you can see that airlines and cruise lines and music concerts and so forth are going to be difficult. But newspapers like the New York Times, the big newspapers, and CNN and the television shows and so, and I think there's a big opportunity that online sports all of a sudden is going to become a lot more profitable than it has been in the past, because all of a sudden you're going to have people a lot more hesitant to join a crowd and sit next to 25 people right next to them in a crowded stadium. I think that there's going to be holdovers that are, it's the same thing with working from home or going to school from home or seeing the doctor via video. We're going to see a lot of changes in just the way that things work. And certain industries are primed. Industries that are doing things remotely, all of the entertainment industries have big opportunities to increase their profitability. And I think that teams are going to have to start focusing. They've been doing it over the years. More and more of the income has come from television rights and broadcast and streaming rights than it has from the live attendance. And that's going to continue. it's going to be exacerbated by this coronavirus, and the longer it lasts, the bigger the impact of all of those changes are going to be on how we get our entertainment, how we get our sports. And when you get down to it, I remember LeBron saying, that I don't want to play if there's no fans. And yet the other side of it is when you grow up as a kid playing the game, that's all it is. It's the game, it's the game itself. It's you versus the other players. It's the talk, like you say, the trash talk that's going on between all of the players and the interactions you get and the coach calling plays from the bench and so forth. It's a whole different environment. And I think that there are ways that you can turn that into something that is a whole different type of entertainment that could replace a lot of the fan screaming and yelling that you get in the background. They might make benches bigger so that the fans are the guys on the bench. That's part of the biggest act of the Lakers in the last year has been how terrific the bench has been and their responses to everything that goes on the court. In many ways, during the rest of this season, when we don't have fans, those benches are going to become an important part of the entertainment process of how the games are really looked at by audiences.
That they are, my friend, that they are. Once again, I'm speaking to my good friend LakerTom from LakerHolics.net. Be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.net. When I go ahead and see what's going on with the landscape of how the NBA is getting back together, I mean, one of the things that I'm seeing that really interests me is the consistent talk about basically just what are these teams going to be doing as far as draft, free agency? How are they going to be able to interweave that between seasons? I mean, some people even suggested the draft go on in June as planned, which I think is ridiculous because you don't even know the status of all the teams and their final record as of yet. I mean, if you've planned to finish out the NBA season for another 4 or 5 games worth of games for all these teams, then you don't really have a marking point for that. You have to go ahead and wait. I think the idea, and this was also suggested by Rachel Nichols and some others out there, on different podcasts and whatnot, that they should give a try to the NBA free agency after the season's over. No matter how short of a time that's going to be, NBA free agency take place before the draft. Let's say a week to 10 days before the draft. Similar to what we're seeing now with the NFL. And I'm not saying model the NFL in some ways, but because last 2-3 podcasts ago, we were talking about modeling the NFL after the NBA. So they should take the best things from each other. I think the free agency is something that they definitely should look at. That would make the drafts a lot more interesting. I think they should try it once. Whether or not they continue to do that, it's up to them. But I think they should give it a try once. In between, they have this time now to go ahead and tinker with things to see what works and see what doesn't. This coronavirus issue is very tragic, but at least allows the NBA to try a few things like a tournament, like flip-flopping the draft and free agency, like starting the season at Christmas. All these different scenarios that the league can try out to see what works and what doesn't. I think this is the time now to go ahead and do that if you get the clearance from all parties concerned, whether it's the owners, whether it's the players, what have you. It's still time to go ahead and maybe do some tinkering now, because I think it necessitates that, because the league is not necessarily going in the right place. Even before this coronavirus hit, it is probably, to my knowledge, the worst season on record. And that includes the strike seasons, anything of that nature. It probably is, to me, the worst season on record for the NBA as a whole. Not for the Lakers, mind you, because we've enjoyed parts of it. We've enjoyed parts of it. Other parts, with Kobe's passing and other things, have been a detriment, obviously. But for the league itself, it's not been a very good one. In fact, one of the worst on record.
Well, one of the interesting things about, I agree with you on this whole idea of free agency happening before the draft, because with a few exceptions, unless you're drafting Zion or LeBron or somebody like that, most of the major holes that you want to finish and most of the major roster moves that a team wants to make are going to come via free agency. And it's stupid to then think that you're going to go out there and draft a kid from high school or a couple of years of college and expect him to fill a hole when you don't even know yet what you're going to do in free agency, how you're going to come out of free agency. So flipping those around totally makes sense. Free agency should happen first. And free agency itself, I wrote an article in Lakerholics.net that basically the gist of which is that this is going to be a totally different free agency than you've ever seen in the past. Not only do you have a very poor class of superstars, I mean, other than Anthony Davis, who's going to resign with the Lakers, your next best player probably out there is Fred VanVleet. And I don't mean to say that VanVleet is not a great point guard. I'd love to have him on the Lakers, but there's only probably 3 or 4 or 5 guys that are probably going to be worth more than $10 million a year in a regular season. And this is not going to be anything close to a regular season, because all of a sudden you're going to find teams are worried about, if you're in a business and your revenues drop 30 or 40%, you have only one option. That is to cut expenses.
But also you got to consider the fact that the free agency market is going to be substantially reduced because virtually all these players that have a year left on their contracts,
they're all gonna re-up.
They're all gonna opt in,
yeah,
because of the uncertainty right now due to the fluctuating cap that's going to be dropping down quite a bit. I mean, there was talk about
even if they were to smooth out the cap, which is likely to happen, because otherwise if they don't smooth out the cap, what's going to happen is nobody's going to have cap space, and a whole bunch of teams are going to be in the luxury tax that had planned for years how to avoid the luxury tax, just because those numbers are going to come down because they're related to a percentage of basketball related income. So you really got 3 factors there. You've got the losses that people are going to have. You've got a very weak free agency group of people in free agency, and you've got only 5 teams that have money, substantial money, and only one of those teams, the Miami Heat, is a winning team. Otherwise, if you're a free agent, your choices are the Atlanta Hawks, the Detroit Pistons. You're not going to get any. You're going to be signing up with a losing team, or you're going to take less money. And this whole thing is going to get depressed. The gist of it, though, is that for teams like the Lakers, who have the non-taxpayer MLE, which is like $9.7 million, which is more than the taxpayer MLE, which is like $5 million, or the room exception, if you're below the cap, which is like $4.5 million, the Lakers are going to have enough money to probably compete for any free agents out there, with the exception of a half a dozen guys. And even that half a dozen guys, they may be able to compete for a couple of those guys on the fringes. But it's going to be an unusual season. And I designated 4 guys that I thought the Lakers have a real shot at getting, who would be terrific additions to the team. They're guys that I don't think are going to be given offers for more than $10 million, at least not by the Miami Heat, and may not want to play on a losing team because they're players that basically have some real upside. But I think that there's a good chance that the Lakers could be able to go after a guy like Goran Dragic, who would be a perfect point guard. There's talk, because of the financial situation of the Brooklyn Nets, that they may not be able to keep Joe Harris, who would be, this is a guy who won the 3-point shooting contest and shoot 43% from deep. You've got a guy, Christian Wood, that you brought up in the trades with the Pistons before, who's been a real star. The guy's shooting 38% from outside. Would be, he's a power forward, but he's really athletic. He has great hops around the rim. Is a terrific dunker. You got him, and so you got 3 guys right there. So you got guys that and then these are all players that basically could come out there and be signed by the Lakers, which could be a real addition to the team. And then you've got a 4th guy that I really like, who's had a great season, which is I forgot his name now, Aaron Baines from the Phoenix Suns. One of the things that the Lakers need, besides having a point guard and a second scorer and a third scorer and a second point guard, is they need a stretch five, somebody who can really make sure that teams like the Bucks and the Clippers don't use their drop coverage and just crowd up the lane and prevent LeBron and AD from getting to the basket. You put a guy like Baines out there who's a rugged defender and one of the best screen setters in the league, and all of a sudden, and he's a pop and pick guy that could basically really hurt teams that run a sag on the Lakers. So you've got 4 guys there that all are going to earn probably less than $10 million a year, less than what the MLE that the Lakers have. And the Lakers should have a good shot, and they basically should go after every one of these guys and take whoever's the first guy to want to take the spot, get a chance to play with LeBron and AD and win a championship.
Because Markieff Morris, unlike what you were saying last week, has not been the answer so far. His shooting has been awful. He's under 40% from the field and under 30% from the three-point area, which is the exact opposite of what he was shooting at in Detroit. So
Right.
It's been very unfortunate that that's happened, because when you said that last week and he's been shooting very well and he's been playing very well for the Lakers, I'm like, we're not watching the same Markieff Morris, because Markieff Morris has really stunk it up out there, but he hasn't played in too many games. So maybe he would go ahead in a playoff series, be able to go and be a little bit more effective. And now that he's going to have some time as far as a training camp, 20, 30 days right. of working with the Lakers, maybe he can get back into form. It's been one of those things where
his best when he was playing with Detroit was the first year he's really shot the ball really well. But when you look at the options, Wood basically can play a little bit of center, but he's primarily a power forward. Baines would be a wonderful fit on the team, and a lot of that depends on what happens with DeMarcus Cousins, because Cousins basically, as I've always said, is the perfect stretch five if he can recover from his injuries and come back. I know you feel that Dwight Howard may end up getting a better offer to go somewhere else. I don't think that's going to happen. And I do think that there's a possibility that the Lakers may trade JaVale McGee as part of a package along with Kuzma. They basically have 2 shots at getting a really good player this year. One is using the draft pick and Kuzma and whatever filler, depending on the salary of the person they're going after. So they've got that one package. They've got $20 million in expiring contracts plus Kuzma and a first-round pick to trade for another player to fill one of the 3 needs, which is a second point guard, a third scorer, and a defensive forward. And then they have the option of the MLE, $9.7 million, regardless of being over the cap. They're not in the tax situation, so they have the non-taxpayer MLE. So that's their second opportunity to really bring in a player, or to use it on 2 or 3 guys, which is what they've done in the past. I'd like to see them bring in 2 strong guys, because I think, just like we talked earlier, you got 4 guys that have got options, including 5 guys, including Anthony Davis, but you got 4 other guys who've got options that are probably going to opt in rather than take a chance on free agency. This is not the time when anybody wants to be a free agent. So you're going to see Caldwell Jones staying with the Lakers. You're going to see
Caldwell Pope
staying with the Lakers. You're going to see Rajon Rondo stay with the Lakers. You're going to see is it Avery Bradley? I think also has an option, and there's one more player. It must be McGee has an option. So you'll see probably all 4 of those guys opt in. Although it's very possible that McGee might get some offers. But I think too that, when things are happening like they're happening in a situation where the league is in turmoil at this point in time, there's always going to be a tendency for people to want to stay where they're comfortable. And the chemistry on this team says a lot to encourage players to want to stay, because every one of those players who's on this team are veterans who've been on other teams, with the exception of probably Kuzma. I think he's the only guy who's just or Kuzma and maybe Alex Caruso are the only guys who haven't played for another team. And all of those guys have had in situations where they played on teams that haven't been, number one, competing for a championship. Number two, had great chemistry, great leadership. Were playing in, in a city that they like to live in, and were basically playing with a bunch of guys that they like to play with. I can tell you back from playing high school and junior college basketball that the chemistry on the team makes a whole lot of difference on how much you enjoy the season, just as much difference as winning does. So I think that there's a tendency that a lot of players are going to stay where they're comfortable. And the guys who want to leave at that point in time are going to be the few who have an opportunity to make a lot more money than they used to make, or secondly, want to get out of a situation that isn't a good situation for them, where they're not a good fit. So there's some good opportunities for the Lakers, some silver linings in the whole financial situation that's coming out that could benefit the Lakers. And I think being able to pick up, they're using a non-taxpayer MLE, which is twice as much as the room exception they had last year, could give them a real opportunity, and it could be a real weapon for them in recruiting another top flight player to play with the team.
And the thing is, you have to make sure at this point in time, while you have LeBron and AD, and they're both healthy, your thermos is just overpowering on the mic. I just want to let you know.
Sorry.
It's like having a third guest.
Sorry about that.
Oh, no worries. Third guest, Mr. Thermos. I wanted to say that while you have the window of LeBron and AD, you can't worry about money. Okay, especially with the Lakers and how much they're worth. And well, they did try to steal $4.4 million. But we won't go there. Actually, I keep on going there because I'm still mad at them for doing that. But with LeBron and AD, you have that window. You have to go ahead and spend every available dollar while you have them here and available to play and playing at the level that they are. If you don't, then you're not doing your team justice, your organization justice, and most importantly, your fans justice if you do not do that. So you know what? You need to go ahead and spend the MLE. You need to go ahead and do whatever you can do as far as even going above the salary cap, going into the tax, going into repeater tax, whatever you need to do, you need to do it right now, because these times may not come very often for the Lakers, because the rest of the decade, as the way it's set up right now, after LeBron, it's not going to be very pretty unless you find another LeBron, which is going to be hard to do, to pair up with AD if you sign AD long term. And that could be another issue aside. If AD sees that LeBron is leaving or LeBron is retiring, he may not want to be there long term as well. So by the time 2023, 2024, even 2025 rolls around, you may not have the team that you had planned or designed. And if you aren't doing a good job as GM, and you and I have talked about this GM before in the recent past, then you're going to really have to go ahead and do your work, because it might become back to a situation in what we saw the past 6 years of futility for the Lakers really quickly once LeBron and or AD leaves. So you got to go ahead and maximize, because your window is small, your window is finite, and you need to go ahead and spend whatever available cash you have on the best players out there that you can get.
Yep, I agree with you 100%. Ideally, this is a perfect situation. There's a silver lining when you have a business climate like we've got right now, where a lot of NBA teams are going to be pulling in their resources and being hesitant to spend. This is an opportunity where, just like in corporate business anywhere, the rich get richer and the poor get poorer. The Lakers can take advantage of this, and they need to go out there. Any other year, any normal year, for example, at that $9.7 million MLE would really mean nothing. Like last year, that was really not anything that could have been a big weapon. You couldn't have gotten any of the guys there must have been 25, 30 players last year that signed for more than the MLE. There are maybe only 3 or 4 this year that do that. So there's a good opportunity for the Lakers to take advantage of that. And I think that if there's anything that that ownership has shown over the years for the Lakers. And if there's anything that Jeannie Buss learned from her dad, and that's not to squelch on talent, spend the money and we'll figure out how to cover that in other ways. And I think that's what the Lakers just exactly have to do. At some point in time, it's hard to predict how long LeBron is going to be able to play. I mean, here's a guy who's 35 years old, and frankly, I think he's still the best player in the league. Now, can he be that way when he's 36 or 37 or 38? And he doesn't necessarily have to still be the best player in the league. Can he still be a top 10 player, a top 5 player at 37 and 38 years old? I think one thing, and we've talked about this before, I firmly believe that the Lakers would not have even been talking about going after Giannis Antetokounmpo if it had not been for the simple fact that they felt that LeBron James might be willing to take less than a max salary in order to make room for him. But it raises up the subject, which is I'm in the middle of writing an article about who's going to be the next superstar to take the mantle from LeBron James as the best player in the league. And there are obvious challengers. Giannis is, in some people's mind, has already taken over that position. Before he got injured, there were ones who claimed that Kevin Durant had taken over that position. There are others that say Kawhi Leonard has taken over that position. I don't think any one of those three has surpassed LeBron at this point in time, but those three plus Anthony Davis are the four that I think are the four best candidates that are out there right now. And maybe Zion Williamson will put himself into that mix, play himself into that mix over the next few years.
I think Luka Doncic has an outside chance of getting to that point where he is the best player in the league because of the fact that he's so skilled. I know there's some issues as far as his physical stature that he doesn't have that LeBron has, which to help LeBron become the player that he is. But I think Luka can really be something special in this league, and he already is in many ways for the Dallas Mavericks. You mentioned Kevin Durant, and Kevin Durant coming off an Achilles injury. I think he'll get back to a point where he's a top 10 player, maybe even a top 5 player again. I don't think he'll ever get back to the point where he was even 2-3 years ago, simply because of the fact that also he's 31 years of age and he's seen a lot of mileage and wear and tear from the NBA. But I will tell you, there are points in time in the past decade that he was the best player in the league above LeBron, and that was proven in the finals. I mean, there were those finals matchups between those two where Durant was clearly outplaying LeBron. At least, LeBron was playing at a spectacular level, but Durant was playing at a notch just higher. So you could say at those point in times, he was the best player in the world. But overall, during an 82 game season, you can see LeBron is going ahead and playing at a level that not many aren't. So, and I know Durant at some points in time during the seasons when he was with Golden State would defer to obviously Thompson or Curry or Green or whatnot. But at some points in time during the playoffs when they were matched up against each other, Durant did play like he was the best player on the face of God's green earth.
And there's definitely an opinion by a large number of people today that Giannis is the best player, is better than LeBron at this point in time, and that Kawhi is better than LeBron at this point in time. I don't agree.
Those are good arguments. I think those are good arguments because the fact that LeBron is older now and that LeBron isn't LeBron at all points of times. We've seen during the course of the season when he gets tired, he does not have that lift, and he is much more easily defendable. He gets a shot blocked when he goes to the rim, things of that nature. So we don't see those type of games all the time. Now we see them like 75.
Those are regular season games too, and we saw a little bit of the playoff LeBron in those last two games against the Bucks.
So that's what I'm saying. When he gets up for these games, there is no one better at this point in time. Even Antetokounmpo can't match up to that level when LeBron is, playing at that Superman level. The thing is, you're not going to get it every game like you did in the past. Now with the Lakers, you're getting it about 75, 80% of the time, which is very good for Lakers fans because obviously it's been able to create that type of level. And you don't need it now as AD becomes more adaptable to the team. The only thing is when LeBron's out of the lineup, you have to make AD more effective. And that's the problem the Lakers have had all season, is that the Lakers have not been as effective when LeBron goes to the bench. And that's something that they have to figure out, because during the course of a playoff run, you're going to have times where you have to, even with increased minutes, you have to have LeBron sit on the bench and get a rest. So you have to have AD become more effective, and you have to learn how to play better when LeBron is off the floor. That's something the Lakers need to focus on as well.
Well, the other thing is that when you look at these players that we just talked about, these 4, 5, or 6 players who are all superstars that are capable of becoming the next one, if you will, because we went through the whole, Magic passing on the baton to MJ, and MJ passing on the baton to Kobe, and then Kobe passing it on to LeBron. One of the things that's different is the style of play. LeBron's got the ball in his hands all the time. Doncic has the ball in his hands all the time. Unless Curry's got the ball, Kevin Durant had the ball in his hands all the time. They have advantages over guys like Giannis and like AD, in that they aren't the guys that bring the ball down the court and initiate the offense there. And so it takes somebody getting to the ball to them a lot of the time, or playing an awful lot of one-on-one for them to become as dominant of players and dominate the ball as much as the guys who naturally have it in their hands. I put AD in that group of that. I think that he's capable. He's still only 26 and just now starting. I think there were points and times in games because of his two-way play where I thought he was the best player on the court, even better than LeBron, and more important to the Lakers in winning several of those games than LeBron was. So I think that Davis's growth is going to be a big factor in what happens down the road for the Lakers. I'm not worried about AD leaving. I think LeBron's going to be around for at least 3 or 4 more years. But there is going to be a point in time where we have to bring in a third superstar who will then be the second superstar when LeBron leaves. And I would like that superstar to be a guard. I think I've said that in the past, as opposed to Giannis. It'd be great to have Giannis, but the NBA still is a guard's game. And even though LeBron is a small forward in normal conversations, the truth of the matter is he's the point guard for the Lakers. He's the guy, and just the same way as Doncic is not. Luka's not a small forward either. He's a point guard. He basically has the ball in his hands and controls it the same as LeBron does. So I think that there's the big transition and the big challenge that Rob Pelinka has is that while he's making all of these moves to win now, well, we've got LeBron and AD, he's also got to make that other big move, which is to figure out, okay, how do I get that third superstar into the lineup who is going to end up being the guy to replace LeBron James at such point in time as LeBron does leave the Lakers and retire. I think Giannis they're going to go after Giannis like crazy, but it's almost like the Kawhi situation again. If they could instead focus on a great point guard, or a great guard at least. Doesn't necessarily have to be a 10 assist point guard. It could be a combo guard who can deliver 5 assists per game. Somebody, that can really handle that role. But we need to get somebody like that, and that's going to be the secondary challenge that Pelinka's got to somehow accomplish at the same time as he keeps filling in pieces to keep the train that's moving right now staying at the top of the heap. He's got to get that another player in there so that becomes not a 1 or 2 or 3 year window that we're looking at, but a decade-long window that they're looking at for the Lakers being championship contenders.
Well, it's been a great conversation, my friend. I really appreciate you being part of it today. Once again, I'm speaking to LakerTom. He is the man behind LakerHolics.net. You got to be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.net. But before I turn it over to you with less than 5 minutes left to talk about what's going on with LakerHolics.net, I just wanted to go ahead and mention to everyone out there, if you can, please, 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 please give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. We would truly appreciate everyone out there listening, as far as if you can do that, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can go ahead and give us a great review, like, subscribe, tell a friend if they're a Lakers fan or an NBA fan. Please listen to our show. And if you are really into the NBA draft, you need to check out the over 12, 13, I think even 14. And when we added the latest episode with Rafael Barlow from the NBA Draft Junkies this week, if you are really an NBA draft fan or fanatic or anything like that and into the NBA draft, I have over, like I said, 13, 14 episodes based off the NBA draft that are still relevant right to this day. And you can check it out all that are all available on the Lakers Fast Break channel. It's right there for you. It's within the past month or so. It's some great conversations with Rafael Barlow from the NBA DraftJunkies.com. Also as well, Michael Weisenberg from the Stepien and Stone Hansen from DraftSite.com. They're great conversations. I even had them all together for mock drafts of the first and second round. Hopefully we'll be able to do that again once the lottery teams are chosen and all that. However, Adam Silver wants to go ahead and do that. So I'm looking forward to it. You got to check it out today at the Lakers Fast Break. And please, if you can, tell a friend. We'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. Send us your comments, LakersFastBreak@yahoo.com or at LakersFastBreak on Twitter. LakerTom, if you have any questions, or you just want to go ahead and check out his crazy trade scenarios like he was doing last week, you can go to at LakerTom on Twitter. Tom, before we head on out, my friend, I want to go ahead and give you the opportunity to give an update to the fans out there and the listeners on what's going on at LakerHolics.net.
Well, we've been talking about all of the same things that we've been talking about on the podcast, Gerald. It's been everybody's sort of anxious to find out what's going to happen with the league and when we're going to get back to games. Everybody's watching all of the Michael Jordan stuff and going through all of those various things. We've been having quite a few posts. I've put up several posts where we're comparing different players, trying to figure out which Laker players would be the one that you'd win to choose to start a franchise. We talked about which 4 candidates that we have for the MLE trade thing, and we've had the 4 candidates that we would want to trade for as guards. So we're sort of keeping that theme. I'm going to be releasing in a couple of days an article that really goes over who is the superstar in today's game, most likely to take over the mantle from LeBron James as the best player in the league. So if you enjoy those types of conversations and are looking for some intelligent debate back and forth with other intelligent and rabid fans who are all respectful and so forth, LakerHolics.net is the perfect place for you to go. And we invite you to join us in the conversation anytime. Somebody's almost always online, so that there's always somebody that you can get going into a conversation. And we all are just eager to get back into the NBA season and have the Lakers finish the job that got suspended because of the coronavirus situation.
And once again, that's LakerHolics.net. Be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.net. And I agree with you. There is a lot to talk about and discuss. So head on over there today, and you'll even get to see some updates from the Lakers Fast Break podcast. You go ahead and check it out there at LakerHolics.net. I'm so excited to talk about what's going on with the Lakers each and every week as we get closer to a possible start of the NBA season. I'm looking forward to, my friend. Any last thoughts on the way out?
I'm just hoping that we end up having the playoffs this year. I'd hate to see the season end up getting canceled. You just don't want that to happen, especially with a 35-year-old LeBron and the team playing as well as they did. It'll be hard to come back for all of the teams. And I think the Lakers, to a man, are out there still hoping that they'll have a chance to go out and win their 17th championship.
Just as long as you don't pipe in the crowd noise. No, 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 no. Just don't do it. Don't pipe in that crowd noise. It's really irritating beyond all description. And
I'm sure that they're not going to do that.
no, no. Do not put it past the networks.
Are you kidding me? Oh, no.
Never put anything past the networks, because when you do, they always let you down. Take it from someone who is in the media for a little while now, that's seen it all. Well, seen almost all. It just never put it past the networks, because they'll let you down every time. Well, LakerTom, it's been great talking to my friend once again, each and every week, every time we have this discussion. I look forward to next week's conversation when we'll talk more Lakers and NBA subjects as it gets closer to a possible NBA season. I'm looking forward to next week's conversation, and I know you are as well, LakerTom. Once again, I appreciate everything that you do for us right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.